marvelous feeling to feel that you're surrounded by love. And that was a very important thing for me and Frankie, you know, because Frankie and I loved each other dearly. How many friends you know for 70 years? You know? And we got along so well. Of course, we didn't see each other that often. We loved to go dancing. Frankie and I danced socially all our lives. Every place we danced at the Cat Club. We just enjoyed dancing. We never danced professionally together because when the music, if you danced with Frankie, when the music hit, you had to be somebody who could fly across the stage because he could throw a chick further than anybody. And I wasn't about to get thrown like that. But as a dancer, he was so perfect. And that was my dancing partner all my life.
All right. Well, as usual, Norma needs no introduction. I had a long introduction planned, and she's already taken off. But I do want to mention a few things. I think I feel incredibly privileged, and I think our community is incredibly privileged to still have Norma Miller with us. She is a woman who, as I said, needs no introduction. She was one of the founding members of Whitey's Lindy Hopper. She was in the first 3 Harvest Moon Balls. She was in Day at the Races. She was in Hell's a Popping. She was in the Broadway musical Swinging the Dream. She worked with every major swing band leader, Cab Calloway, Count Basie, Duke Ellington, Chick Webb, and in addition to the Savoy Sultans, and the list goes on. But she was a fixture at the Savoy Ballroom. But in addition to all this, she, after the war, started her own act, the Norma Miller Dancers, which ultimately became the Norma Miller and the Jazzmen. Yeah. And in addition to that, after accomplishing all of that in her early years, she went on to become I think a nationally renowned comic. And yeah. She actually introduced Richard Pryor on his first record.
First album, yeah.
Yeah, and worked with Red Fox. She also has worked with
Bill Cosby
and
Flip Wilson.
Flip Wilson. The list goes on, but I think I'm just going to put the microphone down. But no, I would like everybody to give a huge round of applause to Norma Miller.
It's just been wonderful because I've had a career of the emerging of black show business into white show business. And it started like in the 30s, like around 39, when we did our first Broadway show. And see, you remember, it was a time when you had black shows and you had white shows. So we was able to break through in places like the Roxy Theater in New York. We played Radio City in New York, and we were able to break through that cloud that used to kept us separated, because the Lindy was the one dance that brought all people together.
I was wondering if we could go all the way back.
Okay.
All the way back to the beginning of how you started with this dance. What was your first experience, and how did you end up in the Savoy Ballroom?
Well, you see, in those days, the music was coming in. We were leaving Dixieland, and radio was the big thing then. And on the radio was a show called the Make Believe Ballroom. And this was the music that was coming in that we heard in our living rooms. But we were fortunate because at the Savoy Ballroom, there was no air conditioning. So these big bay windows was open. So if a 16-piece band is on the bandstand, it goes into the street. It goes in, we lived in back of the Savoy, it came into our living room. And when we walked in the daytime, we used to, like the bands would be rehearsing, we'll be dancing out in the street. I got chased away from the ballroom so many darn times because I used to be out there dancing. The music dictated what you did. Well, the dance that was coming in was swing. I mean, this is what everybody did. I was 20 years old before I knew that everybody didn't do it. I just thought this was something that we all did. And I used to watch them do it, and that's what my sister and I used to dance in our living room, what we saw the people doing in the ballroom. So it was an Easter Sunday, and after church, everybody ran uptown because it's going to be a 4 o'clock matinee at the Savoy Ballroom. Now, you got to understand, Easter Sunday, New York comes out into spring clothing. You have that Easter parade downtown But boy, did we have a parade up 7th Avenue and Lenox Avenue, and it led right into the ballroom. So I went up just to see the people go in with the sharp clothes and everything. I mean, because you're coming out of winter, so you're wearing your best clothes. And I'm standing out there watching them, and the music started at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So being kids, we dancing and everything in front, listening to the music, and I heard a voice say, "Hey kid." And I turned around, and it was this tall 6-foot man in a white hat, white suit, white shirt, white shoes, a long chain. I mean, this was a great Twist Mount George calling me to come and dance with him in the ballroom. And he said, "You want to dance with me?" I said, "Yeah." Oh, I mean, everybody, you know, well, see, I knew everybody who went into the ballroom, like all kids, you know, like guys like the, you know, the cowboys and everything. I knew the dancers. And he came and got me and took me into the ballroom, and I had my first opportunity to go in the ballroom and to dance with Twist Mount George on an Easter Sunday at the ballroom at the big afternoon matinee, and I was a sensation. I'm 12 years old, baby. Listen, I could outdance anybody. I mean, he could just pick me up, and you know, it was just something. I knew the music. I felt the music. I was part of that music. I was part of that whole generation that came up with this great music. And then, of course, it developed to the place where I won a dance contest at the Apollo Theater at 14 years old. And who wins the contest will get a week's work at the Apollo Theater. And that was the first job I had at 14. I danced at the Apollo Theater. And this was my first professional job. And the next day, that's how I met Whitey. I was going to school one morning, and the knock was at the door. And I opened the door, and there was this man surrounded by 2 goons. And he said, "I'm Whitey." And he said, "I saw you dance last night. I would rather you dance with us than against us." And then who came to the ballroom? Ella Fitzgerald. She won a contest, and she wound up being the vocalist with Chick Webb. And she would sing, she sang in the ballroom, we danced in the ballroom. So Mogale, packaging, the first show for the Apollo Theater, package, Chick Webb's band, Ella Fitzgerald, and the Savoy, that was Savoy Lindy Hoppers. And that's how we started. And we became her opening act all through her tour.
And so the Whitey's Lindy Hoppers were originally called the Savoy.
Well, we didn't become Whitey's Lindy Hoppers until we went with Ethel Waters in 1937, when we were doing, before Dead the Races. She gave us the name Whitey's Lindy Hoppers because she dealt with Whitey. So that's how we got the name Whitey's Lindy Hoppers.
Wow. So tell us a little bit about Herbert White. I understand he was a bouncer at the Savoy Ballroom.
Exactly, and an organizer.
Yeah.
And he realized he had something in this music. He was a smart guy, you know, what he wanted to do was to develop an act, but he wanted complete control. And I mean, we were controlled. Nobody would dare think of doing something if Whitey didn't like it. I mean, we had no minds. But we're under 16 years old. We're young, we're fresh, and we're good. And Whitey kept us secluded. We weren't allowed to go anywhere. We couldn't go out, we couldn't date, we couldn't do nothing. Because he knew what we had, he could get us, and it's true, we got to movies. And we went straight to Hollywood. And it was because, and then